Every single thing in the world today takes us away from who we are, truly who we are, our true being, where we're heading as a spiritual being, and away from our true purpose as an individual, a cell, as part of the whole of humanity. Now, yesterday we spoke as part of the spiritual journey with emphasis on the importance of active service while we're seeking wisdom. And I use the analogy of, as we go out to the circumference, the importance of going in to the centre as well. So they are two aspects of service. Yesterday, I won't re-give the service talk, okay? So we're talking about outer and inner action. So they can't really be separated. They go together. But often you see in the world, and I too have been right down this track where you just do the outer action. And the result of that is exhaustion, complete exhaustion. You don't go in and rejuvenate, and you don't go in and know who you are. So you don't want to get to burnout and exhaustion. So this other side is very, very important. So two aspects of the same coin. Now, our theme of connectivity and responsibility, that too, it goes two ways. So as you're going out, you're going in and you're coming back out. So it's like the infinity symbol, and it's like a loop, and it's very, very important. So you could even have that symbol somewhere to remind you of the importance of going in as we go out. So that inward side of action, when we talk of service, is just as important as the outer action. Now, that poem last night that I shared on the history evening, I will share the first part of it again, because it spoke about our two natures. It spoke about the light and the dark, so the inner and the outer. But I am only going to share the inner this time. Two natures are within each human being. One is a child of the clear light of day. In it is nothing dark, but all seeing. There is all sunshine, nothing hid away. Its innermost thy eye may penetrate. There is no secret and no mystery. In it rule wisdom, justice, love, and faith. Spotless as crystal is its purity. So who would not like to know that side of their nature? Last year, when I spoke about cultivating the vision within, I left it on a certain note, and I thought we would sort of begin this talk on the note that we finished off last year. The intellectual concept of unity or oneness is not enough. We need to cultivate a growing awareness of oneness in our daily life. Did you remember that? Did anyone remember the quote? So I'm sure you've been busy cultivating that all year long. And we can only do that if we allow the time. And that time is our choice. And as a human being, that's our right to make that choice. I love this slide particularly. It's kind of naming the elephant in the room at the same time, that is here, covered over completely by all sorts of things that we've put there. Okay? But it is closer than our hands and our feet, closer than our breathing, is this inner side that we speak of. Now I'm going to share a passage on listening. I found it quite helpful, because do we ever truly listen? And can you, for example, have silence when you eat? Like, have you ever sat down with 5 people at the table and people are nattering away, but we never really just eat and just be? Sometimes sitting in a group, you know, I can sit with friends sometimes and we can just have total silence and we all do our own thing, 5 of us. But it's very hard to make the leap from what I would call normal, how you've been brought up, into making that leap into your everyday life with the people in your household. I used to have to say, I was thinking of a friend of mine, we both had 2 children, well, I had 3, but she had 2 children. Her children were very quiet in the car and they'd drive from A to B and she would get there really calm. My children wouldn't be quiet, ever. And Richard and I would say things like, it's now quiet time and we're just going to have a competition. Who can stay quiet the longest? We would do things like that just to get a few minutes peace. I wouldn't make it a competition now. I wish I'd done it a certain way. But the point is, that was the family culture that I was brought up in and that carried forward as well. Now, this particular passage I'll share, I found it quite helpful. And at the end of the day, it's about allowing and surrendering, really. It's what it is, without putting our story over the top. And this passage came in on the 1st of January on my internet on some junk mail. Okay, so but it was helpful. It's actually from the Krishnamurti Foundation in New Zealand. And it's called The Miracle of Listening. It seems to me that very few of us ever do listen. We do not know how to listen. I wonder if you have ever really listened to your child, to your wife or husband, or to a bird. I hope that you will listen, but not with the memory of what you already know. And this is very difficult to do. You listen to something, and your mind immediately reacts with its knowledge, its conclusions, its opinions, its past memories. I think we can all relate to that. Just observe yourself, how you are listening. Often we listen to respond, of course. We're listening to someone, we're thinking, oh, how am I going to respond to this? And you will see that this is what is taking place. Either you are listening with a conclusion, with knowledge, with certain memories, experiences, or you want an answer and you are impatient. You are not actually listening at all. You can only listen when the mind is quiet, when the mind doesn't react immediately, when there is an interval between your reaction and what is being said. Then, in that interval, there is a silence, which alone there is a comprehension, which is not intellectual understanding. It is the interval that is the new brain. The immediate reaction is the intellect, the old brain. And this old brain functions in its traditional, accepted, reactionary, animalistic sense or tendencies. When there is an abeyance of that, when the reaction is suspended, when there is an interval, then you will find that the new brain acts, and it is only the new brain that can understand, not the old. That's actually from the Book of Life. This is where the quote's from. So if we know how to listen, that very listening is an action in which the miracle of understanding can take place. Now, let's talk about a new brain. You know, science talks about pathways in the brain, and I was thinking back to that when I was a child. I was brought up and you had to learn everything by rote. So there was no one wanted my thoughts or opinion. You had to learn this, you had to do that, and better seen than not heard in general. And so when my children were little, I got this puzzle where you had these little cars, they were all on this a 3D type puzzle, and you had to find the cars, get them on their way out of this maze of a puzzle. And my son would whip it up in 2 minutes, each one, bing, bing, bing. And I thought, I'm going to have a go at this. Well, it took me 30 minutes, and I had a headache at the end. And I know that I burnt new pathways in my brain doing this exercise. I was truly amazed. It still sits with me this day that he could whip it up in 2 minutes. And I just did not have the capacity for that, but I was not going to leave until I did that puzzle. Not that that is particularly about listening, but in a way it is, because I was extremely focused on something I wanted to do. I turned my attention and I focused. So, do you think a new way of being can come about if we do not listen? And I'll go as far as to say, and we've all heard the term, sacred listening. And sacred, to make holy and to make whole. So when we listen, we start to see our own patterns. So if you were talking to someone, I've done lots of practice with this, you're talking to someone and you can see the mind click in and say, oh yes, yes, yes. And then you start to say, oh, look at my mind doing this. So start to observe your own mind. You don't have to observe every other little thing. You only need to work on yourself. And you watch your own mind do this. I've been in mid-conversations with people where some things I could start to feel something rise in me and get a little bit frustrated. But then if you pick it up in that moment, you are aware of a pattern, and you watch yourself and you actually say, oh, and so all this is going on while this person is talking and you're being the observer. It's a very, very helpful pattern to see. But as time goes on, you start to see that you really listen more, because in a way you have to deal with the patterns first, because they're all here. They're all impinging quite strongly across all the time. So it may take some time to get to a space where you can really listen and see the person and what they say. A mind rich in understanding is not burdened by the memory of yesterday, as it is ever renewing itself. And of course, the word listen, when you mix up the letters, they make the word silence. So when we listen, we're trying to find out who we are. So we're trying to find out who we are. That's the goal here, because I don't think we really know who we really are. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a beautiful quote, and I find this one of the most inspiring. I am the self, seated in the heart of all beings. I am the beginning, the middle, and the end of all beings. So that's who you are, that's who I am. If we don't ever listen, see our patterns, once we start to do that, I think that's the beginning of real wisdom. Not any form of book knowledge whatsoever. The real beginning is when we start to know who we are. In the third proposition of the secret doctrine, this is one of my favourite quotes, the pivotal doctrine of the esoteric philosophy admits no privileges or special gifts in man or woman, save those won by their own soul through personal effort and merit throughout a long series of metempsychoses and reincarnations. Personal effort is the only way, and we're the only ones that can do that. We know reincarnation, life after life. You may wonder about the word metempsychosis, and it's Joy Mills who has said metempsychosis is a fundamental change of consciousness, a series of awakenings. So there's nothing free. It is only personal effort. And in doing so, we need to make a choice. This is where our human beingness comes. Often animals don't have choice. They act on instinct. But we have choice whether we're going to, for example, pop down the road and go shopping for 3 hours? Or am I going to just have quiet time to myself and just be? Or am I going to run out and be busy? Different ways of doing things. So we always have choice. I thought this was a good picture for our choice. Can you read it down the back? Okay. He says, can I call you back? I'm watching a live stream. Okay? All right. So we always have choice. Now, before I talk about our goal, in the introductory area of the Secret Doctrine, HPB quotes this little tiny quote, and she says, "Gently to hear, quietly, kindly to judge." Shakespeare. So she has that there. So quite pertinent. And then in the first paragraph where she's talking about something else, and she's using a quote here, which I'm not sure where this quote is from. It says, "Error runs down an inclined plane, while truth has to laboriously climb its way uphill." Okay? So we're trying to get to truth. All right? So, there we are. So our goal is to be ourselves. That's our goal. Be who we are without all the patterns of desire, power, control, emotions. So do you want those patterns that we use, the way we respond all the time, the having to get the last word in, having to be right, all those things, do you want those patterns leading this charioteer of this vehicle? Or would you, the real you, the master of this vehicle, your own sovereign power, the soul, do you want the soul to be the one that directs this vehicle? That's where this is all leading. There's a beautiful quote where I think this Master KH was talking to one of his pupils. They weren't successful, but he was talking to them. And this one really resonated with me. Master KH was quoting Tennyson, okay? Self-reverence, self-knowledge, self-control. These three alone lead life to sovereign power. That's it. So know thyself. That's what those three. So he was giving her some advice because her emotions were all over the show. She was just a mess. And this one, it resonated with me when I read this one. I've kept this one a long time. So our goal to be ourselves, be who we are, without allowing those patterns to control us. So let's consider for a moment that what you call yourself, the personality, is actually just a composite of habits and behavioural patterns. You develop to cope with, well, this is trauma, to cope with, I would say, situations with life, etc., over many lives. Now ask yourself, who am I outside my pain? Who would I be if I stopped living life as a product of my story? Because our stories are really important to us. You know, we hang on to them for dear life. Yeah. So let's say it again. Who would I be? I am the self, a divine being seated in the heart of all beings. I am the beginning, the middle, and also the end of all beings. That's who all of us are here. And Master KH, I love this quote. It's from the letters. It is upon the serene and placid surface of the unruffled mind that visions gathered from the invisible find a representation in the visible world. The unruffled mind. That's who we are, the unruffled mind. Not the patterns, not the story, etc. So our mind can be like that, and we can reflect the one, the divine. But we can't if it's all muddy and cloudy and rough and tumble. It can't be reflected in our life. Now, for all of our studies, philosophies, reading, etc., justice and truth, you think of karma here specifically when it comes to justice, are only perceivable ultimately at the broadest level, from the perspective of the one. So we can philosophize over something that we cannot know unless we go within. Do you understand the importance and the urgency of this mission with the world the way it is today? I want to share some words from this gentleman's an environmental scientist. His quote: "I used to think the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse and climate change. I thought that with 30 years of good science we could address those problems, but I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed and apathy. And to deal with those we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. And we scientists don't know how to do that." It was a really poignant quote. This one here too. And remember Thomas Merton, what can we gain by sailing to the moon if we are not able to cross the abyss that separates us from ourselves? Now in the Secret Doctrine there's a beautiful task that lays before us, and it lays it out very clearly. The world of today, in its mad career towards the unknown, which it is too ready to confound with the unknowable, is rapidly progressing on the reverse, material plane of spirituality. It has now become a true valley of discord and of eternal strife, a necropolis wherein lie buried, and see, they lie buried in a graveyard, they lie buried, the highest and the most holy aspirations of our spiritual soul, of who we really are, right here, in here. Now there was this is quite a nice thing. I thought this is lovely to remember. Remember that we know who we are. Remember that we are water. So cry, cleanse, flow and let go. Remember that you are fire. Burn, tame, adapt, ignite. Remember that you are air. Observe, breathe, focus and decide. Remember that you are earth. Ground, give, build and heal. Remember that you are spirit. Connect, listen, know and be still. Thank you.